Morning, everybody. I'm going to do something a little different today, something that I haven't done for many, many years. I'm going to speak behind the lectern because I have a lot of facts and figures that I'm going to present, and I don't want to leave anything out. This universe of ours is governed by immutable laws, and they have been in effect since the beginning of time, since the Big Bang. One of the most important laws that benefits us, that provides for our growth and our involvement, quite simply states, if you do a specific thing, that is the cause, you are going to get a specific result, which is the effect. If you do that very exact same thing, you get the very exact same result. Now what that tells us is if we do something that has negative consequences, that is hurtful to us or others, that if we do that again, the same thing is going to happen. So we can learn not to do that. If we do something that has positive results, then we know that's something that we want to repeat in our lives. And every recovered alcoholic knows if they take a single drink, their drinking will continue and escalate. That is the law of cause and effect. Now, every living thing in nature abides by this law. But human beings at times think that we're immune to this law. We do the exact same thing over and over and over, thinking that we'll get a different result, but we end up in the same miserable place of discontent. Now, even a cat doesn't jump on a hot stove twice, but we seem to be making many, many mistakes that are repeated. Cousin Ozzy is a perfect example of this. Every year, he and Lars Iverson go to northern Canada to hunt moose. They go way up in the wilderness, so far off the grid that they have to be flown in with a pontoon boat. The pilot drops them off, and he picks them up a week later. Well, one year, the pilot came back to pick them up after a week, and Cousin Ozzy and Lars Iverson had bagged 3 moose. But the pilot said they could only take 2 back, because the plane could not handle the additional weight of another moose. Well, Cousin Ozzy got upset. He argued the point. He told the pilot that last year, the pilot let him bring 3 moose back, so he should let him do it again this year. Finally, against his better judgment, the pilot said, okay, you can take the 3 moose back. The runway for the pontoon was a long stretch of lake. The pilot revved up the engine and began to accelerate. They began to move faster and faster down the lake until eventually they went airborne. The pilot could see the end of the lake about a quarter of a mile away. So he went to maximum acceleration, began to pull up. The plane got higher and higher. It was struggling. But the closer they got to the end, just at the height necessary to clear the trees, the plane couldn't bear the weight and it crashed into the end of the lake. Now, luckily, no one was hurt. As they crawled out of the plane, Lars said to Cousin Ozzy, do you know where we're at? And Cousin Ozzy said, yeah, we're the same place we crashed last year. Now that is a law of cause and effect. If you do the exact same thing under the exact same conditions, you're going to get the exact same results. Now the point of the lesson today is about our country, the United States of America. In many cases, we are doing the exact same thing over and over and over again and getting the exact same negative results. Now, when this continues, a trend develops. And from the trend, we can determine what is going to happen next. If our pollution continues to get worse and worse and worse, we know that if we don't change something, it's going to continue to get worse until we have a disastrous situation on our hand, which I believe we're at right now. Before I continue, I need to preface my remarks by saying this is not a political punch, not a political pitch. I'm not bashing our country. I love the United States. It's my country. I'm a loyal and devoted citizen. But that doesn't mean turning a blind eye to the conditions we Americans are faced with and just hope that everything will turn out okay. Just as we monitor the actions and progress of our children and guide them toward a healthy, wholesome lifestyle, It's important also that we pay attention and insist upon changes to the unhealthy and destructive trends that children might do. It is time for Americans to review our country's report card and make changes to those actions that have put us on a perilous path to the future. Now, the best way to do this is by comparing ourselves to other countries, comparable countries around the world. Other countries that have succeeded in solving the problems that we're now facing. Per capita, our country, America, has more auto thefts than any other country in the world. We have more illegal drug use than any other country in the world. We have more people incarcerated than any other country in the world. We have more rapes than any other country in the world. We have more murders than any other country in the world. So the question before us is why? And what is the problem? Why can other countries solve these problems and we can't? Let's take a close look at what I believe are the three biggest challenges we face. And they affect everybody living in this country. One is a skyrocketing trend of homicides and shootings. Our rate of murder and manslaughter by firearm is the highest in all developed countries. It is 4 times higher than comparable countries. Americans are 25 times more likely to be shot and killed than people living in other countries. Now that is a serious and startling statistic. And once again, the question is why? Studies over several decades confirm that easy access to guns is a risk factor for violence. Per capita, Americans have more guns than any other country in the world. There are more guns in this country than citizens, if you can believe that. We make up 5% of the world's population, and we have 45% of the guns. Now, mass shooting is when 4 or more people are killed in the same attack. In 1999, 2 students walked into their high school in Columbine, Colorado, and killed 13 people. Since that time, mass shootings have escalated at an alarming rate. And when we look at the chart here, we can see where it is heading. The trend is continuing to have more and more mass killings with a higher number of people. Some say the solution is tighter gun controls. Weak gun laws allow illegal guns to proliferate. And the states with more guns have more homicides. That is a statistic. Others say eliminate the sale of assault rifles or bump stocks and have mandatory universal background checks and waiting periods. All good ideas, and all can have a positive effect on slowing down the trend. But none of these are the solution to stopping it. And I'll get to that in a moment. Another challenge I place in the top 3 is healthcare. Once again, per capita basis, our country, America, spends much more on healthcare than comparable countries. In many cases, it is double, as you can see here. We're the one in the red if you can't read the countries underneath. Yet Americans have a shorter life expectancy, the highest infant mortality rate, greater adverse health conditions than comparable countries. On average, we, Americans, are in poorer health than the immigrants coming into this country. Once again, why? What's the problem? One of the problems is because our healthcare costs are so much higher than other comparable countries, there's a constant resistance to expanding healthcare services. We have to cut on the services that we have. When we look at our country's discretionary spending, 6% is spent on Medicare and healthcare, 6%. That's $66 billion. Yet 54% is spent on military, $598 billion. Now, I think defense is important. I think military spending is good. But I don't believe that the ratio of healthcare to military, you can see the military in the right in the dark blue, and healthcare is one of the little slivers at the bottom on the left. I don't think that ratio is being fairly distributed. So what's the problem? The problem is not with the health care that we're getting, but is what we're paying for the health care that we're getting. Our healthcare costs are much, much more than other comparable countries, yet our healthcare service is much, much less. We are putting our healthcare on the sideline while profitability takes front and foremost our priority. Now, other countries don't have this. Some have gone to a national healthcare system, such as Medicare for All, which is very popular right now. You know, the 25 healthiest countries, they all have healthcare service from the government. We continue to push back on that because we say it'll be too expensive, but research has shown that it's less expensive than the system that we have now. Well, the top three challenges we face, I believe, and these are not prioritized, the third is our environment. In regards to the environment, the top 5 concerns are biodiversity, which is every living thing and ecosystem that makes up the environment. From the mighty elephant to the smallest insect, everything plays an important role in the maintenance of our Earth. But with the increase in global warming, pollution, and deforestation, the extinction of species is in the millions. This is creating an imbalance in our ecosystem that is going to be very harmful to every species that lives on the planet. The second one is water pollution. Oil spills, plastic waste, toxic chemicals are damaging our most valuable resource. The third is deforestation. We need plants and trees to survive. They provide oxygen, food, water, and medicine for everyone. Yet our forests are decreasing at an alarming rate. They're not being replanted, and they're reducing our supply of oxygen. This results in 15% of all the greenhouse gases that we have. The fifth is climate change. When we look at the trend of climate change, it is moving into uncharted territory for most species. It continues to go up and up and up with a struggle in regards to how to curtail it. And it's causing unprecedented changes in our actions. So what is the problem? Why? And the fifth one is pollution, which includes air, water, soil, noise, radioactive light, and thermal pollution. Now, the primary problem is there are many goods and services that are unfavorable and damaging to our environment. But they are profitable. And we, us, our country, hold profit at a higher importance than we do our environment. We're trading the rest of the world, the rest of the comparative countries, in an incredible way. The top 20 most environmentally friendly countries are here in the list. But where's the United States? The strongest, the wealthiest, supposedly the smartest, the most advanced country in the world. Where are we on having the most environmentally friendly country? What is the problem? Why do we have it? With every one of these major issues, the same question arises: why and what is the problem? How can we, our country, fail at so many important issues? Now, there are thousands, if not tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of people, good people, smart people, dedicated people, working daily on all these problems that we face, but oftentimes their suggestions fall on deaf ears, or they're met with no funds for their project. We've adopted a quick fix philosophy that has us devoting our time and energy to the effect that fixing these problems has. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a cancerous sore. We're only looking at the surface of the cause and not at the cause behind the cause. What is causing? So, where do we go from here? You know, for each of us, as well as every living thing on this planet, individual consciousness is everything. It defines our existence. It determines our future. It places us on a path to heaven or a path to hell in regards to residing on this earth. In addition to our individual consciousness, there is a collective consciousness. And what that means, quite simply, is that if you take what everybody thinks, the opinions that everybody holds, the perceptions that everybody has in the entire world, and put that together, you get a majority of feeling in regards to where to go and what to do. The collective consciousness is just as important as our individual consciousness. And the collective consciousness of this country right now is not addressing the problems that we have, simply because we can't see, we don't have the foresight to imagine where this trend is leading us. And the second thing is many people just don't experience it. They don't have the information they need to understand where we're at. When the collective consciousness of the world shifts to new thought, once that collective thought is hit, for simplicity's sake, let's say there's 500 people in this room, 250 people like red, 250 people like green. Let's say over the years, 400 people like red, 100 people like green, even though red has a certain dangerous element to it. Well, until the people that like green begin to educate themselves and begin to hold in prayer the future of our country and begin to relate to their Congress people what their desires are, that is not going to increase. But once it does, and it gets to that 50-50 point, then what happens is a tipping point. And when 51% of the people who like green override the 49% that like red, there is this tipping point where it is a very fast movement to 100% of the people, or the vast majority of the people, liking the color green. At one point, it was considered by most people that the earth was flat. Everybody accepted that. When somebody came across the lane and said, no, the earth is round, it was denied. They were called insane. But eventually, as people became more educated and as scientific research continued to progress, it became obvious the world was round. And so everybody came to accept that, and that's the truth we live by today. When it comes to death by firearms, the easy solution is to conclude guns are the problem. The availability of guns is the problem. But not just solve the problem, but cure it, so it never reoccurs again. We have to go back to the original cause, which is the thinking, the mindset, the consciousness of a part of the collective consciousness that has accepted the idea it is okay to take another person's life. It is okay to murder. That is within the collective consciousness of this world. That is a germ, it's a deadly virus in the psyche of those who kill. And the true mission before us is to move beyond the element of consciousness and exterminate it forever. I believe the future holds for us, maybe not in our lifetime, but at some point in time where taking another person's life, whether it's in war or whether it's on an individual conflict basis, will not even be a consideration. It will be obsolete, it will be exterminated. When it comes to health care, throughout human history, we have continually progressed forward to cure diseases and develop immunities, yet at this time in our history, the wellness of our population is not a priority. It gets short-shrifted and undervalued, taking a backseat to other matters not nearly as important. It also takes a backseat to the profitability of big drug companies and other insurance companies and healthcare companies that seem to reap 6 to 10 times more than companies in other countries. Meanwhile, the health in this country deteriorates and many people have no health care at all. It's time we move beyond that element of consciousness that holds the notion money and private interests are more important than the welfare of people. And we can do that. I see a point at some time in the future, once again, where every person has adequate health care. It's the best health care in the world, and it is at a price that is much more reasonable than what we're paying now. That will happen. Now, this is not a socialistic viewpoint. It's not a political viewpoint. It's a humanitarian viewpoint. The value of the environment within the collective consciousness is miserably low, and is seeped in ignorance. How can we not realize that our existence depends on the environment when we are facing upward trends in the deterioration of a wholesome, healthy livability on this planet? It doesn't take a scientific genius to realize that we are moving toward worse living conditions on Earth and doomed for the future generations. Hold a vision of something in the future where no person would ever do a single thing that would be harmful, detrimental, or injurious to the earth. That thought is exterminated from our collective consciousness and our individual consciousness. Shifting collective consciousness is not a giant leap that we can take, where it can change automatically, but rather it is one of little measured steps that consistently progress forward. It is on a generational timeline that begins with re-educating all those who are open, and from preschool on, making it a vital part of our educational system, shifting the consciousness that is now held by this country and by other populations in the world from unhealthy to healthy, from unsafe to safe. Everything begins in consciousness. Everything you do begins with a thought. Every time there is a mass killing, every time somebody litters or there's an oil spill, it begins with a thought in mind to do something that has that chance. Consciousness is what has to be changed, and each and every one of us can do that individually, and we can begin to affect the collective consciousness by writing our Congress people, by getting involved with other organizations that are pro-environmental, that are interested in lowering the killings by firearms, and by increasing health care so we're much healthier. Some of you may be thinking this is a pie-in-the-sky idea, that it's an overdose on false hope, that it can never happen. But let's remember the capacity of the human spirit. Let's not deny the power and the wisdom of the human spirit. Since the beginning of time, the history of humanity has been meeting with problems and overcoming them. And oftentimes, it was called an impossibility. Stop and think about the last 150 years. You go back 150 years, if somebody would have been there when the Wright brothers flew their first plane at Kitty Hawk, they said, well, someday we'll fly to the moon. They'd say, you're crazy, that's impossible. When Thomas Edison invented electricity and people began to have this incredible power in their homes, if somebody would have said, someday we'll get that from the sun, we won't need electricity, they said, that's impossible. They'd be considered insane. But we've overcome impossibilities. We can do the impossible. And that all it takes is to find the initial cause of all these problems we face. Not just the appearance, but the initial cause. When you find the cause, you find the cure. And I believe it's consciousness. We can cure the infection in the consciousness of this world simply by beginning to re-educate ourselves and moving towards not the trend that has been established, but reversing it with a change and beginning to move beyond that trend and come back to a sense of normal, healthy living on our beautiful planet Earth. That we can do, we begin it, and future generations will reap the rewards. I thank you for your consideration, and once again I want to say this is not a political statement, but it's something that we all need to invest our heart and our souls and our minds in, and we will succeed. We'll now move into meditation.